Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time today and welcome to our town hall. We'll be talking about the coronavirus and COVID-19, trends, resources, and insights into the kinds of challenges our clients are facing. My name is Bobby Larson. I serve Holmes Murphy as the education consultant. I'll be your moderator. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few logistics regarding the audio and web-based features of today's program. The only people you'll be able to hear during the webinar are our presenters and me. Any questions or comments should be proposed in the messaging panel on your screen. If your messaging panel does not appear, click on the icon that looks like a little talk bubble in the lower left corner. The presentation you're viewing right now will be advanced remotely, so simply sit back, listen, and watch. And if you have a question throughout the program, feel free to type it into the message panel on your screen. And just so we can practice, as well as see who's participating today, please type your name, organization, and the role you play into the messaging panel. We'd love to be able to welcome you. Please note this webinar is being recorded to allow those who were not able to join us today to gain access to the material. I'm joined by my Holmes Murphy colleagues. Rich Youngman is our fraternal practice leader. Mick McGill is the VP Client Service. Rob Mraz is Associate VP Claims and Client Advocacy. And Dr. Lori Hart is our Director of Educational Initiatives. You'll hear from all of them during the course of the town hall, but for now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hart.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. As we look in the conversation, I just want to reiterate, if you're on the call, it's really helpful for us to see who's in the call because we can't see it with Skype. So if you don't mind just putting your name, title, and who you're with, because that will help us gear the content and probably the questions, so it's more useful for your time. I see my repeat people coming back, so I just want to thank folks for coming back. That says to us this time is useful. We have created this space, and we will continue to create this space as long as you feel it is useful for you to come back with us for 30 minutes every week. We have many of our team on the call today, so I thank the team for being here. And this time is really just, we're going to update you. We're going to share what we did from our conversation from last week and kind of give you some trends of the week. In the world of Holmes Murphy, I'm going to start in the same way. We practice the art of how we take on risk is avoiding, reducing, and transferring. And as you are listening to what is going on right now in the world, I think there's a great leadership lesson of who's making decisions and who owns the authority to make decisions. And we're at a place where the governors are going to make decisions about the fall, and they're in their own place of avoiding, reducing, and transferring, I think, as they establish those timelines. As it relates to the news, though, and what's happening in the news, as we think about not avoiding, our headline this week was from Dartmouth College, where the students are returning to Hanover. Americans, I think in general, we're going to forget this virus very, very quickly, and I think college students are going to try to forget it very, very quickly. So they have returned, and they're partying, and they're hanging out in fraternity and sorority houses, according to the article. And the police are trying not to approach them because they don't want to expose themselves, and who makes the decision and what can be done. So I think we're going to continue to see some pop-ups of students trying to return quicker than normal and getting out of their parents' home or somebody's home where they don't want to be. And I think we'll continue to see universities in this headline. And so from that, I would just encourage anybody who has not thought through a cease and desist order to think through that, and for housing corps to think through that if their facility's closed. We just got off a webinar. It was sponsored by the American College Health Association, the National Foundation for Infectious Diseases, and Craig Roberts was one of the people that they had on there as an expert. He's an epidemiologist emeritus at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and he had one of those slides that intrigued me. It's preparing for fall. I think that is where we understand, that is where our clients are. We understand as we listen to our team at Holmes Murphy, those are the questions that are being asked is, what is the plan to return? As you know, we don't own that decision. But there was an article yesterday, CNN, and the CNN was colleges and universities are beginning to consider the possibility that in-person classes may not resume until 2021. I think any good business is thinking right now about the when of the return. Boston University has already canceled their in-summer activities. The president of Boston University has called the return to fall as the best case scenario. Harvard is looking at, quote unquote, a lot of different scenarios. And the president talks about the tremendous amount of uncertainty. In this article, Eric Fiegel-Ding, he's an epidemiologist and he's a visiting scientist at the Harvard T. Chan School of Public Health. His quote is, it's promising, and then it's kind of, but he said, I think colleges should definitely make plans for delaying start dates and intermittent closings and reopenings because epidemiology modeling suggests we have to go into open and close waves until potentially 2022. Not too promising, but it's also followed by as soon as the vaccine is here, it's going to be better. But as Craig Roberts, going back to the webinar we were just on, I think his promising quote was, assume that we're going to open. Let's just assume we're going to open. And I think we all have to kind of hope at some level, operate in that mode of assume we're going to open. I think we will be providing guidance and knowledge to you in the assumption that we will stay open. And in part of that assumption, as we look at the CDC and the information Craig provided, I think one of the things that you will need to think through in returning for fall is there will be testing widely available and there will be resources and the universities are going to be responding. But also, if you are here in a facility capacity, you're going to have a plan to figure out how to separate the ill and then the exposed. So isolation versus quarantining. And not repeating what we call the cruise ship disaster, where everybody is just living together and then everyone's ill. You're going to have to think through your communal living situations. You're going to have to think through how the facility is laid out and what your lease says, and if the university is responding and having a place for students to go. So in your space right now, as you are thinking through fall, that is where I would be thinking in as far as what is the system, what does the house look like, what does the layout look like, what does the facilities look like, the bathroom, and I believe that we will need a plan in place. I believe that parents and students returning are going to kind of want to know that plan. So as you prep for fall, that's where we're going to keep our focus and not necessarily how to host, can we host parties in the fall? That will be somewhat determined by others. So a few resources. We're going to keep driving you back to the CDC. And a few weeks ago, they added the coronavirus self-checker. If you still have people in your facilities, the self-checker is going to be critical. If someone says, I have symptoms or I'm feeling symptoms, the self-checker is the first place to start. And then also, if people are currently in your facility, just to make note of, this is the best information where we would direct you to think through a plan or a system as it relates to someone's tested positive. I'm going to let Bobby pop on because we have a few new resources this week in Holmes Murphy that she's going to share.
Again, you can find all of our stuff on the holmesmurphyfraternal.com website under the resources for fraternities, sororities tab. All the coronavirus stuff is up at the top. You can find all our recorded webinars and town halls there. Our new resources include a facility FAQ based on our discussion with Clay Wardlaw of Safety Plus LLC and the questions you raised last week, as well as a resource suggesting things you might think about if you're approached to house medical professionals in your facility. That one is based on questions our clients are asking of us. So if you have suggestions for additional resources that would be helpful, please let me know and we can get to work on their development. B. Larson at holmesmurphy.com.
Thank you. I think also for those of you who are NIC clients or anyone, I think Todd Shelton is a communications genius at some level. And Andy, I love Andy, just said, Andy and I's brains think alike. He was like, the NIC is working on resources as well. The NIC website is just really thorough. It's really good. Todd is doing a good job of synthesizing and pulling articles and putting them into one place. Chronicle of Higher Education articles that often need a password. They're all sitting there. And so whether you're an NIC group or not, I think this has become a good place that I kind of go and just make sure we're checking base and that we're overlapping. But great place to find the resources. Also, I like to just point out something every week. Like there's so many resources right now. I think all of us are sitting on webinars all day long in resources. And everyone is doing free speaking and free coaching and free working and free resources, and that's cool, right? This is just a CrowdHub webinar that popped up in my inbox, and it's a former CEO of Burger King. I'm not sure what he has to do with crisis, but maybe he had his own crisis we're not aware of. So I'm just posting this up there as a webinar that's available, and it's free, April 16th at 11 a.m. As a CEO, I'm sure he had his own crisis. I'm not minimizing that, but just something for you to think about as you're coaching your employees and your staff. So we're going to jump back into the conversation of last week. And the conversation of last week, someone tested positive, so what, or now what? And from the information that you all posted in the conversation, it really helped us form what you needed as a resource. As Bobby cited, we have pulled that all together and it's sitting in one place. But this is really what the resource looks like. I'm not going to read everything to you, but the gist is, what if someone tests positive and the member lives in the facility? We're going to point you back to the CDC around the sick room, a separate room, staying away from people and pets, and how do you home isolate? And so the question is, for our folks on here who represent housing corporations, is do you have the ability to do home isolation? The other piece of this to think through is there a safer alternative? The member chooses to go home. The university is providing housing for those who've tested positive. I think it's really important for you to think through like university resources and making sure you're reading those resources and knowing what the university is doing around this. And then also, do we have an active cleaning and disinfecting program in order for someone to remain in the facility? And the important piece is knowing the difference of cleaning versus disinfecting. So here is where I would go. If you haven't had a plan, if you haven't thought through a plan, if you're thinking about a plan for fall or currently, again, I'm going to point you back to the CDC, some very good practical information. What's the difference between cleaning and decontamination? This information is from the CDC website, but it's important for us to begin to understand that. It's also important to understand that it is not our new members' job in our organization in the fall to be cleaning or decontaminating. So there really does have to be a cleaning protocol in place, and who does this work. Again, pointing to the CDC, and then the list in the disinfectants that are used. That would be a key thing, and we're going to point you back to that in just a minute. So what is cleaning versus what is disinfecting, and when do we need to know the difference of those two things? So again, CDC website, that's what it's going to look like. List in, that's what it's going to look like when you click on those links in the resource. And this is our piece of this. What's our guidance? And this Clay Wardlaw, who does this work, we kind of tapped into him and listened to him. So what we're trying not to do is any knee-jerk reactions. So this is our guidance. We do not mandate. We provide guidance to you to make educated decisions. But if a person is infected, is the house being cleaned per the CDC recommendations? If you're following the CDC protocol, I mean, depending on the size of your house, depending on there's lots of factors, but there's lots of people who are infected who are doing self-isolation in their personal homes and not necessarily calling in a decontamination company. So you need to think through that piece of it. However, if more than one person is infected in the house, if they've been shedding for 14 days and all of a sudden now having symptoms, and all of a sudden everyone's having symptoms, you're probably at a different place of thinking through, we might need some professional assistance. But in deciding, you need to think through cleaning the whole facility, the common areas, the hot spots, because all of that will impact prices and cost. And then if you decide to use a professional decontamination company, what are the questions that you should ask? And I think this is a very valid list that you should be asking. I equate this, for those of you who know not a lot about cars, it's when you go to get your car checked and someone's like, well, there's 7 things broken and $8,000. You're like, okay. Like when you don't have knowledge, you're just kind of like, okay, I guess it has to be fixed. What we're trying to do is equip you with the knowledge so you can make an educated educated decision around this. So these are the questions that we would encourage you to ask. If you come across a question you need help with, I can certainly probably navigate some guidance on this, but again, our role is to provide guidance. So feel free to reach out to me and I can ask Clay. And then I'm going to let Rob speak a little bit about ServiceMaster.
Thanks, Lori. Again, this is Rob Mraz with Holmes Murphy, and I am the AVP of Claims for the Fraternal Practice. As part of our service to our clients, we've worked with the carrier to identify a preferred vendor when it comes to restoration for water mitigation, fire, and that to help control costs and ensure our clients get the best service possible when selecting a company. As part of that, we've reached out to ServiceMaster regarding some of these questions and have learned that ServiceMaster provides cleaning and decontamination services for COVID-19. While this is not currently being covered under the property policies because COVID hasn't reached the level of causing material damage to the property, we still realize that there is a need for this and have tried to work with them to provide a great service, available service with minimum cost to our clients because it's probably going to be out of pocket. ServiceMaster has gone through all of those questions that we previously provided as to who you would or what you would ask regarding how a company is qualified, what their certifications are, and ServiceMaster is IICRC qualified along with many other certifications, and that's an Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration certification. All of their decontamination protocols have also been co-developed by an environmental firm. They have additional training and background in bio and trauma work where they routinely clean up bloodborne pathogens, and they're certified to do that. Those are the kinds of things you'd see in a messy claim or required hazmat cleanup and things like that. So they follow all of the guidelines of the EPA and list products. So they only use products that are sourced from those approved lists in treating this virus at this time. They also, have a sensitivity to making sure that the products they use will not damage your facility. The products are generally have a very low sit time to clean or disinfect, depending how they're using. They're talking anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes from treatment, and re-entry is possible once they've confirmed that their scope of work is done. One thing that's varying right now, and not only with them, but with many other companies from our surveys of the industry, are that the cost per square foot can vary greatly depending upon the scope of the job. And some of that is also due to the size of the facility. So for a preventative routine, roughly cleaning, you're looking at 20 cents to 50 cents a square foot. The variation there really depends on the size of the crew, how much time it takes them, and personal protection equipment that they have to use in that process. A disinfectant, where you've had maybe a confirmed case in a residential setting, which would really apply to our clients as well, as anywhere from nearly $2 a square foot to $4 a square foot. And again, that really depends upon the amount of time and size of the facility and the amount of equipment that they're using to clear and disinfect that facility. Our clients still have access to the dedicated ServiceMaster number, which we will post so that you get preferential service from our clients. Again, it would be direct billed back to you. It would not go through the claim process at this point, but it is available to you. That's all I got, Lori.
All right, thank you. Okay, this is where we get to ask questions. We get a lot of repeat folks, so I know, as I said in the beginning, you're finding some value in this, but Any questions that you're hearing from volunteers, from students, insurance, non-insurance, that this is a good forum to ask those questions. So I'm going to give you all a minute just to use the message box. And are there any questions? Are there any topics? Is there anything Holmes Murphy is not meeting your needs on? For the good of the order, feel free to start typing. And while you're typing, I am going to say, I'm going to give a little kudos to my pal, Andy Longo, on the call. Andy is taking a lot of this work that's being done and transferring it down to the members of Delta Tau Delta. So we're doing a webinar with their specific Just Housing Corps folks on Thursday at 6:30, and taking this kind of town hall stuff that resonated and connected. We've put it into one webinar for them. So appreciate Andy doing that and meeting the needs of his folks. But if you have anything that you have heard or that you would like repeated just for your clients, we are just email Bobby and myself, and we'll figure out what that looks like. And they're also always welcome on these calls as well. Are there any questions? The whole team's here waiting. Anybody? Okay, going once, going twice. All right, I'm going to let Bobby highlight our webinar that's coming up at 2 o'clock.
Yes.
We don't have a slide for that.
If you would like to talk about something other than coronavirus, we would like to invite you to join us. We're presenting a webinar in conjunction with the Association of Fraternity and Sorority Advisors, Cannabis Use and College Students, presented by Dr. Jason Kilmer of the University of Washington. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Jason, but what I say about Jason is that he could read the phone book and it would be interesting. He is one of the most knowledgeable and engaging presenters I've ever heard. So if you would like to add another webinar to your schedule today, you can find information of how to link to it on the events tab of our website, holmesmurphyfraternal.com. And Rob, I was trying to track down the ServiceMaster number and I have not been able to find it yet. If you have a chance to type the ServiceMaster dedicated phone number into the chat box so folks can see that, that would be really helpful. We do have another town hall scheduled next Wednesday, 12 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. Following this format again, it's a space created for you to ask questions, think through problems, and share resources and successes. If you have specific topics to suggest or questions to pose in advance, please do reach out to me at blarson@holmesmurphy.com. Oh, we have a question. Aaron, checklist for operations while closed and maybe checklist for reopening procedures. That is a good suggestion. Adding it to the agenda for next time.
Yep, Aaron, why don't we just make that the topic for next week? That will be our town hall. Aaron has just named our town hall for next week. So we will spend half of the time kind of saying, while you're closed, have you done the following, and then reopening. And then part of that reopening, I had already kind of written down a thought of what's your plan for fall and the questions you might need to be thinking through. NIC might be doing that. Someone should check with Judd. Thank you, Andy. I'll check with Judd on that.
Bobby?
Yes.
To the dedicated line for our clients is 888-927-4877. And we encourage all of our clients to call that number. It is a nationally dedicated to our clients to ensure priority service and the preferred pricing with ServiceMaster. You're not required to use ServiceMaster by any means, but if you want to take advantage of it, it's certainly a place to start. And you can vet anybody coming in by asking those questions that we've provided in that checklist today.
Thanks, Rob. I was trying to track it down and talk at the same time, and it was not going well for me. Mm-hmm. All right. If there are no other questions, I'm going to thank you for your time today. We appreciate all the participants who are giving of their energy and thoughts and good stuff to the fraternal community. We really appreciate all the efforts you're sharing with your members during this crazy, crazy time. The webinar will be recorded and the recording will be posted on our website probably by tomorrow, but feel free to contact us with any follow-up questions or conversations. We really just appreciate your time and thank you very much and hope that we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.